All right, so this time around, we're going to take a look at another Azure AI connector for the Power Platform. And this one is the Azure Cognitive Service for language. It's basically looking at text and doing a number of things with text of various types. Um, so before I get into this, one of the things that you will need is an Azure resource for Azure AI text. It used to be called Cognitive Services. Now it's like text analytics, I think. Um, but if you go in and as far as resources go and you do a search for Azure AI, I think it's language. Hang on, what is it called again? Oh, Azure AI language. That's what it is. Uh, and you just look for language. So yeah, so it's Azure AI language. It's hard to keep track because they're constantly changing the names of things. It's ridiculous. But you will need to create an Azure AI language resource. And when you get in here, I mean, you'll see that it's text analytics. You'll see the endpoint still says cognitive services, even though it's no longer called that. But once you have that resource set up, that's what you'll need for that. Um, so there's a number of things that you can do with it, and you can use either a key, like you would for most Microsoft resource or Azure resources. But you can also use an Entra ID for specific users as your authorization to connect to that endpoint. And I'm just going to talk through the API key piece here. Sorry, that's what I'm going to be using for this demonstration. So as far as triggers, there are no triggers associated with this. There are only actions that you can take. You'll see the first group of them. There's a bunch of them that start with the word async. We're going to skip past those today. I mean, those have been around for a while. They do mostly the same things that most of the other endpoints will do, most of the other actions, but they do them kind of in a different way, and they're not really um, that useful. It's basically for doing like bulk actions as opposed to do like one file at a time, and mostly also against a um, custom project that you would have created in your Azure AI. We're not going to go through any of that today. I might circle back to that at a future point, but for now, we're just going to go through the simple endpoints here. There are other things that you're going to see here is that for each of these, there are a bunch of deprecated ones. This is one that they've iterated through a number of times, and you'll also see a number of preview versions of various things. So let's talk through what each of these does here. As far as conversations, we'll go ahead and actually, sorry, conversations is the same as the async ones. It's one of the older ones. I'm going to skip past that one again. So let's jump ahead here to detect language. So there's a version 3.1 preview and a version 4 preview. You should probably use the version 4 preview. And basically, it looks at it and identifies in a block of text what language it is that you're using. Uh, and it's pretty accurate. It does a pretty good job of that kind of stuff. And we'll do some demonstrations of various things here when I get to the demo part of this. So there's detect language. Of course, there's the deprecated versions of that. There's detect personal information, so it looks for things like bank account numbers, phone numbers, addresses, names, social security numbers, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, again, here there's a version 4 preview of that one. There's sentiment, detect sentiment, and that's actually been replaced one that's called sentiment v4. And we'll show that when I skip down to that here. So you won't use the detect sentiment actions anymore. Then entities here. Entities basically, again, it helps you identify things that are in um, named entity recognition. That's one that's been replaced by that one again. So let's wait till we get down there. Sorry. Entity linking. So this is basically a more general, I guess, version of the named entity recognition. A lot of the data that it'll send back is the same kind of thing. Things like names, that kind of stuff. So generate answer from project. So if you have a project defined in your Azure AI resource, that has a bunch of knowledge. It's basically like searching a knowledge base and looking for an answer. That's what that will do. So, but it's more language, fluent language type stuff. It's the same kind of result that you would get if you were to create like an Azure AI agent. It's basically the same thing. And if you were to do like a search using that Azure AI agent, this is doing it just using the AI language resource instead. So essentially, you're getting the same results, the same kind of thing. You're searching a knowledge base for the answer to a question. Key phrases, that'll search through a block of text and pull out various key phrases that are in that block of text. And of course, again, there's deprecated versions of that. So named entity recognition, that's, as I mentioned, it's basically looking for various things in a document, things like names, that kind of stuff. And I'll show you some more details here, and we'll get to the demos and show you exactly what kind of stuff comes back for each of those. And then again, here's sentiment. So that's sentiment analysis is what it replaces, and basically looks at the language of a block of text and returns the tone. Says, okay, uh, this is a positive, generally positive. This is generally negative. It's neutral, that kind of thing. And it gives you a score basically from 0 to 1. And it says, okay, if it's towards 1, then it's mostly positive. If it's towards 0, it's mostly negative in tone. And we'll show you here with the demo file that I'm going to process for this test. Let's go ahead and take a look at that demo file here. Okay, so here's the sample file I'm using. It's just basically a sample of an angry letter from a customer. Let's zoom in here a little bit so you can read the text. It's just basically a letter from a customer to a person. So I've got a name, an address, phone number, email address, name and address of the company, and and then here's the letter. I'm writing to complain to you about blah blah blah. And I've included, just for the fun of it, included a bank account number, a couple of percentage numbers here, a fake driver's license number, a fake social security number, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what kind of information that it pulls out, that the various things pull out of here from this particular sample file here. So this is what we're going to use for our process. And go ahead and look at some of these here. So let me show you just a couple of things here. As far as the details go, we jump down here. So detect language, it's basically you pass in a block of text, it gives you back a language version, the language result, and basically it'll give you the code for the language and tell you what it is. So has detect language, detect personal information. So it looks for things like social security numbers, bank accounts, names, and any of that kind of PII type of information. Let's see here. So entity linking. So basically, this gives a list of recognized entities with links to well-known knowledge base. So you can see it supports various languages here. And again, you'll understand better when we get into the actual demonstration here. Generate answers from a project. So this is the one where basically you're searching a knowledge base to get an answer based on the text that's being sent in, and you get a bunch of parameters that you can make, that you can use here. I don't have a project set up that I can demonstrate this one. I'd have to create a whole knowledge base project, which is fairly in depth, or takes a while to get that set up. So that's a little bit more complicated one. So I'll see if I can return to that at a future date here. Key phrases, it just gives a list of strings denoting the key phrases of the text. Again, very straightforward. Named entity recognition. So general named entities in a given document. So for this, it gives you a list of entities that it'll get back here. And we can do that. Just take a look at some of these. So there's person, type of person, locations, so addresses, organization names, so like companies, political groups, bands, that kind of stuff. And then it can give you a subtype for the various entities here. If it has a specific type of thing, it can give you events. So if it recognizes specific events, maybe World War II or you know uh, the election of somebody, or whatever it might be. certain historical events. If it can identify those in there, it'll pull those out. Names of products, you can get those. Lists of skills, addresses, phone numbers, emails, website addresses, IP numbers, dates, quantities, so numeric quantities, subtypes, those things. So percentages, so it should, when I do that, it should pull out, percentages of various kinds. Those are the kinds of things you can get back from that. And then sentiment gives you like a detailed sentiment analysis for the text input. And what you get back in the sentiment response essentially is uh, statistics will give you various information about um, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's neutral, that kind of thing. All right, so that's kind of a high-level overview of the things we're going to look at here. So let's go ahead and jump into our um, flow here in Power Automate. This is where we'll demonstrate this stuff. So I've got a trigger input here where I'm going to pass in the file. A file comes in as base64, so you have to convert it to a string in order to pass it to sentiment analysis. So for that, I've got a compose action here and a function base64 to string, and it's pulling the body of the content pipes out of the trigger here. And that's what we'll pass into the various things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pass in um, language service. So let's do language. Let's see if it comes up there. Yeah, there we go. Azure Cognitive Services for language. So first thing we'll do, let's do a detect language. So we haven't set this up here, so let's go ahead and add our connector information. So we'll call it Azure AI language. And for this, we're going to need we're going to use an API key, and we're going to get our account key from our application. So let's copy our key and paste that in. And then root site URL, that'd be our endpoint here. So copy that over, paste that in, and create new. And you can see we've got that here. So we use the connection settings for that. So for our input, we're going to do, we need to give it an ID. So each document that you pass in has to have a unique ID. For this, we're just going to pass in we're just going to use the default of 1 for everything. So the text that we're going to pass in, we're going to take the output from our convert base64 to string. Why is it not letting me type that in here? Oh, output's done. I got to click on the right thing. Then country hint, if you know the language, you can put that in there. Because we're doing detect language, it's kind of pointless. So I'm just going to do that. And you can pass in multiple documents. So you can pass in batches. We're just going to do the single file here. So advanced parameters, you can select specific model. You can ask it whether or not to show stats. You can ask it to log the output in case you're doing troubleshooting kind of thing. So it saves the output for you, but we're not going to use any of that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for detect language. Let's go ahead and run that. Go ahead and do a test. And we're just going to use the text that's already been passed in. Our previous test, it's going to be a failure. I'm going to figure out what's going on there. Okay, so I'm not sure what was going on there, but I exited and reloaded the flow, and it works now. So whatever. So here's the response that I got back. So we've got stats 200s is all the header information, and then here's the information. So for the body, you get a documents section, and the ID matches to the ID of the file that you passed in. So that's how you would keep track of, if you're passing in multiple documents worth of information, you would connect the IDs of what you passed in to the ID of what came back out. And then of course that's got detected language, got English here, and the ISO code is EN and confidence score 1. So it's absolutely confident that this is English. And then here's the model version. So it's the model from November 2024. So that's the response that you get back here. And this also jumped back to the old version of the editor. Not sure why. So let's go ahead and exit that out and go back into it. Let's do an edit. Okay, so now we've reloaded with the new designer. Let's go ahead and look at the next thing. So we've done detect language. Let's look at sentiment analysis here. So let's do sentiment, if I can spell it. There we go. So we're not doing AI builder, we're doing this one. So Azure Cognitive Services, so we're doing sentiment V4. And actually, for now, let's go ahead and get rid of the tech language. We don't need to rerun that. So again, we're going to do that. We're going to pass in an ID of 1, and the text that we're going to pass in is the output from our trigger. Again, with these, there's a number of other parameters here. So you can do model version stats, login output, opinion mining. So if I remember right on that, before, yeah, so set to prove responsive not only contains sentiment protection, but also opinion mining, which is aspect-based sentiment analysis results. So just a different way of analyzing the sentiment of the output. We'll go ahead and leave that off for now. And then string index type, you can tell it the exact encoding, or I think, or no, not that's not what it is. Oh, okay. Specifies method used to interpret string offsets. So, yeah, we're just going to leave it at the default text elements. Let's go ahead and just clear all that, and we'll go ahead and run. So to save and test, and we'll select our file again. I don't know if that had anything to do with what was causing the issue before, but it seems to be working okay. All right, so we got our response back, and we'll go ahead and do raw outputs, and we'll copy that. Well, okay, it's popping up here. So here we go. So document 1, sentiment is mixed. So you can see a little bit of positive, a little bit of neutral, and a whole lot of negative. So I would probably, if I were to look at this, I'd probably call it definitely more negative, if I were reading that myself. But so it tends to agree with that. So it's saying a little bit of positive. Again, these scores are all from 0 to 1. So 0 being not at all, and 1 being complete. You can see by far the highest number is negative. You can say, name and address information, that's neutral, obviously. Name and address information is neutral, and neutral, and then it starts getting to negative. So I'm writing a complaint to you. This account is advertised as having 4.75% interest, which is neutral. Because that's stating a fact. This constitutes false advertising, which is obviously negative. This poor service, obviously negative again. As proof of my identity, again, that's not that's just factual information, so it's neither positive nor negative. So again, you get neutral there, and then the signature, sincerely, call that positive, and then like angry customer is negative. So you can see the various information that you get back here, and you can look at it in various ways, and it kind of pieces it apart. Says, okay, for each of these, I'm giving us these various scores, and then it gives you your totals here at the top. So that's sentiment analysis here. So let's go back into edit mode. So let's start picking out some of the key information here. So let's go ahead and get rid of our sentiment analysis. And we're going to add in, let's look at all these here. So let's look at, let's go ahead and do detect personal information. Let's do I think this is the V4 preview. Yeah, V4. Let's do detect personal information. And we're going to give again key of 1. Pass in our outputs. And again, it's pretty much the same, um, optional. The only difference here is you can specify specific categories of PII information to pull out. We're just going to leave it the defaults for now. Go and do save and run our test. All right, that's completed here. So let's look at the raw outputs here. All right, so see the text, it's redacted a bunch of the text here as far as that. So it gives you a redacted version. So if you want to use this to take out a lot of that PII information from the block of text, that's the first thing that it gives you back is that redacted text saying, okay, for that. And actually, you know what, for this, let's go ahead and copy this out here so we can look at it in a little bit bigger version. Um, okay, so here we can see the response from that. So we've got our redacted text here. You can see a lot of this PII information was taken out, all the address information at the top, driver's license number, social security number, the name at the bottom, all that was taken out. So this works really well for creating versions of content that hides that information that you don't want getting out in public. So you can create a redacted version of various content. And then, of course, it'll start giving you the various things that it identified and pulled out. So, saying this is the name of a person and confidence score 0.92. The address, confidence score of 1, so it's absolutely certain that's an address. Again, another part of an address, phone number, email address, identified an organization. And again, another address, an address, a person type, Mr. A bank manager is another person type. Social security number pulled out. It also potentially identified it as an EU driver's license number. So, could be saying it could be one or the other here. And again, here it's saying this could be EU driver's license number. So, anytime that it's not quite sure what to put it in, it'll give you multiple options or multiple results here. And saying, okay, that's a US Social Security number, pretty certain of that, and you'll be right. Person type, I'm an angry person. That describes me perfectly. So that's a lot of great information that it gives you back out of here. Okay. Let's hop back into our flow here. There's a couple other things we can look at. Go back to edit. And let's add in. Let's do the named entity recognition now. Let's see here. Version 3, was that the newest one? I think that's the new one, yeah. See, we give it document 1 and in our content. And test. If we'll do it with the previous test data, it should work. Okay, running. Yep, it worked fine there. Okay, so let's look at our outputs here. So again, see, it's giving you a lot of the same types of information. So a person, an address, phone number, an email, organization, address, person type, bank manager. But you can see here is a little bit different kinds of things. So instead of identifying that specifically as a social security number, it's calling that a quantity. Or sorry, this is that was the account. That's the account number. So you can see that bank account number that I put in the text was it's identified as a quantity. And again, here it pulled out the percentages that I put in there. And again, another quantity. I broke that apart. So you can see with named entity recognition, it's giving you a little bit different take on the information. It's not identifying that as PII. It's saying, okay, what's just the random information that's in there? So you can pull out facts, figures, statistics, numbers, names, any of that kind of stuff. So it's giving you that same analysis, but with a little different take on it. All right, and I think there's one more to look at here. Let's look at the key phrases. There we go, key phrases. Again, put in our ID and our outputs. And language, so it's optional because it'll usually detect the language pretty well. But if you want to identify it as a specific language, you can pass in that language type here. And let's go ahead and run the tester. All right, and we're running. And we're done. Okay, so again, we'll look at the raw outputs. So key phrases it pulls out here. So, dear Mr. Bank Manager, gave you its name, driver's license number, savings account, false advertising, poor service, angry customer, interest rate, fake email, that kind of stuff. All right, so it's identified a number of different key phrases. This can be hit or miss. I've found over the years that I've used it. Sometimes it will be really good at identifying what it thinks are key phrases, and sometimes it's a little iffy. But I think most of the time it does a pretty good job of identifying things that you can use to create indexes of various documents and files, ways to tie together documents that are possibly related to one another. If you're creating like master indexes of content, the key phrases stuff works pretty well for that. All right, so let's just double check here and make sure we didn't miss any actions that we want to cover for this particular thing. So we did detect language, and we did entity linking, key phrases, and we did sentiment analysis and named entity recognition. I don't think we did that, but it'll give you pretty much the same stuff. So let's do it real fast here. Okay, let's do named entity. Oops. Named entity recognition. Before. Yeah, we did entity linking earlier. So we can just see if it gives you a slightly different take on things again. All right, save and test and run. All right, so let's look at our outputs. Again, you can see a lot of the same stuff here. It's giving you that information. It's not identifying things as PII. It's just giving us basically categories of various information. So a lot like the entity linking gives you a lot of the same information. And a lot of these, there's a lot of overlap between all of these. So you just find the one or maybe two approaches that work best for what you're trying to accomplish, and then you just that's how you put them together. So that's the Azure Cognitive Services language connector for the Power Platform. It's a great way for identifying content in a piece of text and analyzing it in certain various ways to pull out the key information and sentiment that you want to know. Thank you.